Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and I've got filmmaker Pirie Martin with me. Hey, Pirie.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, Zoom disclaimer right off the bat. Pirie is in Adelaide, Australia. I'm in Los Angeles, California, USA. Do I have to say that? And and so we're on Zoom. So Zoom does compress the audio as it records it and does some other things. So if we don't sound amazing, it's not our fault. If we interrupt each other a little, it's because there's a micro delay, because our voices are going up to a satellite that is geo-positioned around the Earth and coming back down. So, it's not our fault, but that's the technical disclaimer. Now, I'll do the quick introduction. Pirie made the film Psychosis that was at the Sherman Film Festival in 2023, of which I'm the festival runner. Took home the Grand Jury Award for Best Screenplay for a feature film. Took home the Audience Award for Best Feature Film Horror. And you had a great festival run and got awards at other festivals that are almost as important as the Sherman Oaks Film Festival that I was a co-founder. Whatever. I'm just joking about my bias. So people should watch your film. They should go to psychosisfilm.com and find out where they can see it, depending on where they live.
Yep.
And I think I did a good job introducing it.
I think that was very good. Covered everything.
I even patted myself on the back for doing it.
Very good.
And the reason I rushed that in a way was because you should listen to the podcast before this one, because we had a great conversation and you learned a lot about Pirie and his work. And a lot about Psychosis, which is really just a fantastic film. So make sure you watch Psychosis of 2024, right?
Yes,
if you look it
not
up,
the 2010. Yeah.
Don't look at the 2010 film. Look at the 2024 film called feature film called Psychosis. But this episode of the podcast is 4 questions, which means Pirie will be answering. Name 3 favorite films, name an underrated film, name an overrated film, and name a lesser-known film that people should seek out. And without further ado, I'll let you share some favorites.
Cool. So I can only pick 3 favorites. Is that the rule?
No, if you need to go more. I will use my very tired joke of I'm not wearing a black and white striped shirt with a whistle. There's no referee or umpire here. If you go long, no one's going to say, wait. No, sorry. The 4th one, 5th one don't count. So go for it.
Yeah. Because I don't like ranking films. It's more just like what are the most influential, like the ones that I enjoy. It's very easy to pick my favorite, I think, because I've got The Fifth Element. That's consistently at the top of my favorite films. And it's probably one of the films I could watch on loop if I had to. Which I can't say of a lot of even my other favorites. So definitely The Fifth Element's got a pretty easy first place. But then from there, I just have like 10 films that are just like always in my top. But I've boiled it down to 3 just for the sake of it. I've added Alien because that was a huge one when I was young. And then I've added 7, the David Fincher, Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, because I don't know, I just think that's like an almost perfect film. I can't really fault it. I love the style of it. Just a huge influence on me as a filmmaker. So they're my 3 official picks, but honorable mentions go to a whole bunch of films. Like I feel awful like whenever they say limit it to 3, and you're like, well, that's just the 3 Lord of the Rings films, isn't it? Like, done. I'd just like to put Lord of the Rings on, or like The Matrix, or like Jurassic Park is the film that got me into film and the film that I watched as a kid. I do think other films trump that one, the more I watch them. But, we were talking about Old Boy recently. Like, I love Old Boy. Too many films to list. So I've just gone with Fifth Element, 7, and Alien, because at least they're different genres. And they're all very important to me. But me as a film lover and as a filmmaker.
I'm with you. And by the way, I don't know why I feel like defending it, but that's one of the reasons why it's phrased name 3 favorite films. It's not like your all-time top 3 or the best 3 ever made. It's just three films you love. You know,
And they mean a lot to
in
me.
no
Yeah.
way implies that there's nothing beyond that, right? Like you said.
No.
And I do want to share that before I owned a DVD player, someone started DVD.com when DVD players were kind of rare and new. And for $1, you could get 3 DVDs. So I did actually pick The Fifth Element, 2001, and Pulp Fiction. So
that's pretty good. Pulp Fiction's up there as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So, but those 3 were on there. Like they were, I think there was like 20. I can't even remember, but you could get 3. So I bought 3 DVDs for $1 when this website was deciding they'd lose money to get a name out there. And I don't know if I almost never owned a DVD player. It's very funny. I was very slow to it. I kind of went from VHS to a DVR, I think. But anyway, but The Fifth Element, I just think is brilliant.
Yes, I can't get enough of that. It's one of those ones that I'm not surprised at all. Here in Australia, we have a TV station that does regular Fifth Element days where they just run it on loop all day. So, you know, obviously other people agree that it's a very good film, but it's one that, like, some people watch it, they don't like how camp it is, I guess. But I love the campiness of it. I love the music and the art style. I mean, anything that's got designs from Mobius and costumes by Gautier, like, you can't really go wrong with a film that's got that much creative force behind it.
You can't.
And 90s Bruce Willis, you know.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And, you know, it has something in it. I haven't seen every film ever made, but I haven't seen this done elsewhere. And I always wanted to do or see someone do where a sentence is said by multiple characters, but it's broken up in different locations, but it all, and he did that in The Fifth Element. And I'm that nerd who, like, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh my God, here it is.
Yeah.
I just think I'm just so glad someone did it.
And the creativity of it. And even the director, Luc Besson, he did Valerian and whatever the subtitle of that film was, which I was really keen for, but he couldn't recapture what they managed to get with The Fifth Element. So it's a very special film. Yeah.
True. All right. Excellent. And of course, Alien 7, all great. Oh, I mean, can't go wrong.
Yeah. Alien, you know, yeah. Well, they've made how many films now trying to top Alien, and they still haven't. I think Aliens is also on my list, but I fold them into one. I might even, you know, I even have a soft spot for Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection because they were, when I was a kid, and Alien Resurrection's such a, you know, maybe it's just I like French filmmakers, but Alien Resurrection is such a weirdly fun movie.
I feel like that's the one that I actually used to argue with people that don't snooze on. Wait, correct me if I'm wrong. Wait, we're talking about the one where Sigourney shaved her head, and
that's Alien 3. That was Fincher.
Alien 3.
That is
an Alien
like
3 defender.
It's a classic one for people to hate, but yeah, it's I think it suffers from the fact that it's part of the Alien franchise. So it was trying to live up to, like, Cameron and Ridley at, like, their, you know, some of their peak performances. And then they were also sabotaged by the, you know, there's all the stuff behind the scenes that a lot of people, they hate the film because it could have been great, I guess. Maybe not just looking at it on its own merit. There's always the politics behind it, and which I understand. I always liked Alien 3. I loved the scene where they're being chased through all the hallways and it's got, like, the aliens' point of view. Like, when I was a kid, that was really cool for me. Maybe because I liked video games and it was sort of, you know.
When I just remember really liking it, and I might have seen it after everyone panned it, but also I remember just loving the fact that the alien finally hosted itself inside another being, inside a dog, and then it came out a dog alien. Like, that made sense to me. I thought that was great storytelling.
Cool ideas. Yeah. It's one of those ones that it has heaps of potential, and I guess maybe kids, like, my imagination would have filled in a lot of the stuff that was lacking in the film. So I never really experienced it as being, like, a bad film. I just loved the Alien franchise. And yeah, I loved the fact that it was a dog alien, and that, you know, the idea of Sigourney having the the Queen in her, and spoiler alert for Alien 3 if anyone really cares. But you know, like I liked that it was a twist on the genre, and each Alien film, at least in the first four, at least do something different. Like they all build on each other in some way, which is refreshing. Like I haven't seen Romulus yet, but a lot of the latest Alien stuff seems to be pretty. They like their face huggers, and they like to show the hero alien shot, and it's that shot in Alien 3 of the alien coming into Sigourney Weaver's face is like more iconic than half of the stuff from the other Alien films as well. Like that's the shot that everyone remembers. So it does have its merits.
And they have a brilliant reason for why it doesn't kill her. So there you go. Excellent. Yeah. All right. Well, next question is name a film that you consider underrated.
Right. This one's a fun one. This is another one of my favorite films, but I didn't have to list it because I get to list it here. I'm a huge fan of a film that I know a lot of people don't like, which is The Shadow with I'm forgetting his name.
Should I look it up real fast?
I'm forgetting his name.
But that's based on that was based on a.
It's based on the old pulp. I think it's a DC. It might not be DC. I apologize to all the fans out there of The Shadow.
From '94 with Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin. Yes. I'm terrible with names. I can remember everyone else. Alec Baldwin's really good because he's weird. He plays it up. Everyone in the film plays it. It's got Tim Curry, which is great. It's got like Ian McKellen as well. Like it's got quite a great cast. It's got music by Jerry Goldsmith. He does an amazing score. I really love the soundtrack to that film. And the villain who plays a descendant of Genghis Khan with mind control abilities. I guess this is something like if anyone has already seen Psychosis or when they go and watch Psychosis, if they've seen The Shadow, there might be like a few little motifs of like the mind control stuff. I feel like there was definitely some inspiration from The Shadow in there because it is all about like hypnotists and mind control, but in a pulp 20s noir kind of setting. So, you know, you can see some of my love for that coming through. But it's just got a really cool, some of the visual effects are really good. Like it's one of those good 90s movies where they just had really great CGI. I just really love it. I love the tone of it. It's silly. It doesn't take itself seriously at all, really. And it's just a good little like crime adventure action film. And yeah, Alec Baldwin gives some really good classic Alec Baldwin deliveries. But yeah, I really love, I can't remember the name of the actor, and I don't think he's done a lot else. I think he had a few films in the 90s that were quite big. But him as the villain is such a fun character. And all of his line deliveries I really love. Like it's a very quotable film, probably up there with like Starship Troopers for quotability. Like it's just full of these weird lines that you just love to say. So yeah, that's another one that I really love. And I know that at the time it didn't perform very well when it came out. So I don't know that very many people, you know, it didn't land in very many people's top 10 lists. And so I don't know how many people have actually seen it. So yeah, that one's one that I always recommend.
I think it suffered from, my memory of when it was released is that it's kind of suffered from coming a couple years after Dick Tracy like cleaned up awards and stuff. And I think people were harsh on it for not being Dick Tracy. Like,
okay, yeah.
I remember that being a thing.
It's a weird one. It's got one of those. It's a film with a strange tone, which is also like Fifth Element has a strange tone. I guess it's something that I quite like. Any movie that's a little bit offbeat, but also you know anything with Tim Curry in it. That's going to be, some people are going to really love Tim Curry, and some people are going to just find it a bit much. But he's really fun in it. He plays like a scientist, a corrupt scientist, which is like the perfect role for Tim Curry. So.
I am comfortable saying I would, if Tim Curry were in a theater reading the phone book, I would buy a ticket.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
And by the way, there's a helicopter. If I don't know if the microphone's picking it up, but there's a helicopter outside. I'm not sure why. So hopefully this microphone's doing a good job of not getting it. And when we finish recording, I'll tell you my Tim Curry story. All right.
Oh, wonderful.
Third question is, a film you consider overrated?
I'm going to be tactical on this one. I don't want to list films that I think are overrated because everyone will get real mad at me. But I do have an answer, and I think because I do believe that any film that gets made deserves whatever it gets. Like if people like a film, like it is a good film, at least for those people. Like for its audience, it's a good film. And there are films that have very small audiences that maybe don't deserve to be loved by everyone, but for the people that love them, like go for it, go nuts. But I do think that over time, overrated films do actually get rated correctly. Like a film that gets real big and then disappears, like it's no longer overrated. And my complaint with overrated films is I think it's just the hype machine that when a film comes out and people, for whatever reason, like it's directed by a big name director. So even before it's come out, everyone's like, oh, best film of the year. Like that, I think, is what kills a film for me as being overrated. And then after a year or two, you go back to it and actually see how many people are still talking about it. And I often find that films don't stay overrated for that long unless there's some good reason for an audience to be obsessed with it. Because there's plenty of films that I just don't get. But I also appreciate that the people that love it for good reason. So I don't want to pick any fights. I'd rather celebrate films that other people hate and boost them than like tear down movies people love.
Understood. I'll let you stay with that because I have no problem with it. And by the way, lots of people have made the point of like nothing's overrated. I sometimes say we're not saying it's a bad film. We're just saying. Well, in fact, for me, sometimes it's a film I quite like, but like sometimes there's a filmmaker I love and their brilliant film got ignored and their less brilliant film won Best Picture, and I'm like, well, now the one that got, I would call that overrated, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think the especially with the Academy Awards, I think those I just ignore them because I know that they're always one film too late. Like unless it's a breakout, like it's objectively like everyone can agree. Apologies if I hit the mic then. Like everyone can agree that this film is too good to ignore, so they're going to give it like. But, you know, like Stanley Kubrick never winning an Oscar, you know, like that was just because I think they were expecting him to keep making films and they were going to give it to him for his soon-to-be greatest film, and then he just they never got to it. And people who do win the Academy Award for Best Performance or Best Film, I feel like often they're going to give it to you because the last thing you did was that good and you missed it. They give it to you later. So it feels like it's more like a lifetime achievement sort of thing. Like they're rewarding you for your body of work, and then the film that they give it to you for is just like one of your best. That's at least my philosophy on it. I know.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And especially with actors
contest
too, right? Like as I recall, I might be wrong, and I'm going to get to mention Dick Tracy twice in one conversation. But perfect. I think, didn't Al Pacino not win an Oscar until like supporting actor in Dick Tracy?
Exactly. So
and was that really the performance that Pacino should have gotten an Oscar for? So So the question is, how fucked up are the Oscars?
Kind of, yeah. But it's that thing of like, a film is only really overrated if people continue to celebrate it like well beyond the point where it's relevant. But I don't think that really happens very often. Like there's a lot of films that win the Academy Award that maybe didn't deserve it over another film, especially like there was the year that Shakespeare in Love beat, what was it? Some incredible film where everyone was shocked. I forget the film now, but you know, nobody talks about Shakespeare in Love all that much, but they still talk about the film that should have won. So films end up getting rated correctly over time, and most films that I would consider overrated are only overrated because they're currently in cinemas and people are going nuts for it, and it'll shit. People will calm down. So
yeah, I think when I was a university student, I pitched to friends. I'm like, well, there should be an award ceremony for the films from 10 years or previous.
Yeah, greatest of the last decade, sort of. Yeah,
so let's just go back. It's 2024, I think. So now let's look back at 2014. What was really what should have won Best Picture? Because it's very. Yeah. But then again, my taste is not aligned with Hollywood anyway. So
Yeah, and I feel like I've got pretty mainstream taste, to be honest. For someone who makes weird movies, I have very conventional conventional tastes and preferences. But no,
Well,
there's definitely
people,
films.
then you would have needed Jurassic Park in your top in Fifth Element's place, though, because Fifth
I would
Element
have just
very
listed
creative.
yeah, the most boring good films from the 90s. Yeah. But I don't know.
And
I've
by
got a
the way,
crossover. I love weird stuff and
I do
mainstream.
love that you mentioned Lord of the Rings because that Lord of the Rings trilogy, one of the great
Mm.
achievements in history. So,
Well, if I wasn't into film when Jurassic Park came out, like Jurassic Park got me into it, I reckon Lord of the Rings would have done it. Because I think I watched the behind the scenes of the Lord of the Rings more than I watched the Lord of the Rings themselves. I just loved the whole filmmaking story behind it as much as the films themselves. So that would have been, if I had been born 5 years later, I reckon Lord of the Rings would have been the defining film.
absolutely. All right. Well, one question left. Number 4
Cool,
is a
cool.
lesser known film that people should seek out.
Beautiful. I had a real hard time actually working out if a film that I wanted to recommend was actually lesser known, because I had a bunch of films that like a lot of people I know hadn't seen, but I went onto IMDb and like it had 100,000 reviews, and I was like, okay, that's in the IMDb top 100. I'm pretty sure people know about that film. It's just not popular among like non-film people. But I'm going to list two Australian films, but I do have a bonus that is actually one that I would like. I always try to recommend to people. I think it's pretty well known, but there's an animated film called Paprika from Japan, which is really weird. It's very much up my alley for, again, if you've seen Psychosis, you're going to see where my enjoyment of Paprika comes from. Like a real surreal, amazing animation, amazing music, but it's not as well known as something like Akira or Miyazaki films. So I always try to tell people about that. But I thought I'd give two Australian films because I don't know how many Australians you bring onto the podcast who are going to promote like lesser known Aussie films that haven't been around in the US. But there was a film that came out this year, a Sydney film that my brother, they were from his class at film school. They made a feature film called Bird Eater, which was really cool. It had a really interesting style, like a really good way to tell a good story. So I definitely recommend that if it's available. I have no idea. I can't actually say where you can watch it. It's probably up on Amazon or YouTube Movies or something like that. But if you can find Bird Eater from Australia, that's really cool.
One word,
really
just
fun.
Bird Eater.
Yes.
One word. Okay.
And the other one, I thought I'd just throw in an Australian film called Two Hands, which is I think it's from the 90s with Heath Ledger. And it is a really good Australian film for anyone not familiar with like Australian films that actually represent Australians. Because we have a lot, like we've got like Priscilla Queen of the Desert, we've got Mad Max, and we've got maybe Muriel's Wedding's a pretty good approximation. But it's often like we play ourselves up a lot, and we don't necessarily make a lot of just like standard thrillers that have a very Australian sensibility. And Two Hands is a really good, just like Australian sense of humor for a crime film. So if anyone's keen to see like what Australia would be like if we made more thrillers and more crime movies, that would be one that I would recommend people check out. Plus, Fantastic. It's really good. Heath Ledger's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's true. What you said about Australian cinema is true. Like we in the USA, every once in a while something breaks through, but it seems like it's more like we just rob you of your best people.
Well, yeah, because there's not as much work here. So, you know, we used to have a lot of work. Back when Two Hands was made, there was a lot going on. So there was more of that. But I think these days, yeah, there's even just when you talk to filmmakers and actors, they're like, oh, I'm just trying to get my American agent so I can work on American stuff. Or it's American films coming here to do work. So
right, they go down there and they get some government subsidy and they get some this and some that, and then and then they
They
make
get
a
access
film.
to all our good crews, but no one will ever give us the money to make our own films. So
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. All right, well, we can wrap it up. I'm going to say it again. Go to psychosisfilm.com or go to the clickable links in the show notes of this podcast and watch Pirie's film, Psychosis. And I will wrap us up. This is the Discover Indie Film Podcast. Like and subscribe to it. Be nice. Heck, you can write a review. I will share my very old joke, which is I think Pirie is somewhere around the 230th filmmaker to be on here. And I don't even have 230 reviews.
I'll leave review.
No, it's not like whatever.
I'll give myself
funny thing
a
is,
review.
a podcast is well, I know nowadays people are trying to commercialize and turn podcasts into a profit thing, but this is a labor of love kind of thing. So, but I would appreciate a not too harsh review. And then so if you want to learn more about this podcast or a TV series that was born out of it, just go to discoverindiefilm.com. On social media, it's always at DIFwins. I don't know. Oh, yeah. In the introduction, I mentioned the awards that the Psychosis won at Sherman Oaks Film Festival. We hold that in December. It's always the weekend after Thanksgiving, actually, in the USA. So learn more about that festival at ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media. It has a sister festival every June called Film Invasion Los Angeles. Go to filminvasionla.com and at filminvasionla on social media for that. I should more often mention that both films are in the top 100 best reviewed worldwide on Film Freeway, which is the platform that all festivals must use for submissions. So out of 12,000 festivals in the world, they're both ranked in the top 100. Go figure. So, I don't know. I got to flex now and then. And then the last thing to mention is please check out the Indie Channel. Just go to indiechannel.tv or go to a smart TV and download the app, the Indie Channel. It is it's an attempt to try to get more people enjoying independently made films. And I'll leave it at that. Pirie, thank you so much. Total pleasure.
No, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And now I will stop recording and tell you about Tim Curry, but thank you everyone for listening.